welcome to another episode of Tiny Nest. I'm Kiva.
And I'm Jake. This series is following our tiny house project from the early stages through to completion and beyond.
This episode shows how we built our utility box.
Something that we left to just sort of figure out on the fly is the box that will contain our propane tanks. We do have a couple propane powered appliances, and we'll talk about those more when we actually install them. But yeah, like I said, we didn't plan this in our SketchUp model, so we just measured it in real space and are just slapping something together. So as you can see, I've got the rough frame built here, and we're going to use some leftover metal roofing on this to match the rest of the look of the house. And there is a bit of a fascia board because of that, and just like the real fascia board, I've cut and pre-fit to make sure that it's all good, then took it off, stained it, and I'm just putting it back on now. So I'll just show you the last piece, how it all fits together. Alright, I know from my test fit that there's going to be a bit of a gap at the top, and it's going to close up a bit more at the bottom. So I'm just using this color matching caulking to fill in that gap once the piece is on. So the box fit nicely, but we realized that this bottom surface is just completely exposed wood. And we figured before securing it down completely, we might as well put some kind of protective layer on it. So we're just gonna slap a coat of stain on it to give it a little bit of weather resistance. All right, it's ready to go. Pretty solid. All right, I got the box secured in place. Just use some screws to fasten it to the house itself, and then use some pieces of our leftover strapping wrapped around the tongue of the trailer underneath to tie it down. So it's nice and solid, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the roofing on now. I'm doing some work on the box. On both sides I've added a 2x4 here and a 2x2 here to give us more backing to nail into for the siding, and on the front even more so because we want to be able to put a hinge for the access door, and we're thinking of just making one huge door for the whole front because we want to have lots of access in here. We're going to have the propane tanks in here, and the other thing is that you may have noticed earlier, we made a slot in the bottom to accommodate the tongue jack so that it can operate and be removed and stored for towing as well. And our options were to have like two doors. I've seen that before, but if we did that, we want to have a post in the middle for the doors to stop against, which would be right here, and that would interfere with the jack. So we're just giving ourselves lots of room to work with on both sides so that we can put a hinge mechanism, leaving the front wide open, and we'll basically just build the door out of siding, hinge it on one of the sides, and have it be able to swing all the way open.
Finished up one side of our utility box here, figured out how to do it, and we'll show you how we did it on the other side.
So for this little spot, we figured it would be best to cut all the pieces before staining them, test fit it in, and then stain it and install it. So I'm just going to do one last check before I actually nail anything down. And how we're going about it is that I've made a mark of where the seam needs to be. And so I'm just going to line this up Now the thing about this is because there's no overhang to slide into, this is just there's a micro overhang because it's cut on an angle, but there's no way of putting something in, levering it all the way in, and then dropping it onto the tongue. So what we've done is cut one of the parts of the groove off so that I can just lay it. I can basically push it up into place and then it'll just drop on, and obviously we'll have to put at least one face nail in to hold that in place. But there's that piece there, and then same thing on this little finishing piece. You can sneak it into place and just drop it on. That's pretty much good. So I'm just going to sort of make sure my mark's in place for the bottom piece, and then I'll start by nailing that bottom one on. This cut is also not only at an angle this way, but it's sloped so that it fits as nicely as it can to match the slope of the bottom side of this little fascia here. Alright, now with the bottom strip in place, I tested it one more time just to be sure that I'm not getting off to a bad start that I'm only going to find out about at the end. And it's all good, so I'm going to proceed one piece at a time. So I just dropped the groove over the previous tongue, and then I'm going to nail in at an angle so that it doesn't interfere with the next piece's groove. I don't want either the head sticking out or part of the shaft poking through where it's not going to be able to seat all the way down on the tongue. So on this side I'm just face nailing in because it's a bit easier and it's going to be covered by the trim. So I'm just going straight in. And a lot of these pieces are a bit scooped, so there's some pressure put like the piece's natural pressure to keep it away from the surface. So I need to push, otherwise if I go like this it's just going to bounce and not work, so I need to push on it. These nails are super easy to bend because they're so tiny, so you gotta be gentle. That's why I'm using a tiny little baby hammer to go along with it. All right, on this side is going to be totally exposed, so I want to hide the nail. So I'm not going to go right into the corner there because you still might be able to see that a little bit. I'm going to go just a hair above it and a little bit away from the end, so I'm not risking splitting the last a little bit there. And I've got wood up to here to fasten into, so right here should be fine. Okay, we're up to the first angled piece that I've cut part of the groove away. So you can see that if I were to try to lever it in, there's things that are interfering. So I'm just gonna slide it up, push it forward, and get it right on there. And I'll put the one face nail here, which won't be visible from a standing position. And then the other one's gonna be covered by the trim over here. All right, and this tiny little wedge to finish it off, just sneak it in, and then I'll put a couple nails over here. I'm finishing off the work on the utility box by making a door just out of pieces of siding. And so I've pre-cut my pieces and just kind of wedged them in so that I can make marks for a door that's going to swing open and not interfere with anything. I've traced out where the door is going to be, and I'm going to cut with a 15-degree angle along the bottom for a little bit of water shedding, as well as the non-hinge side for ease of swinging open, and then just straight cuts for the top and the hinge side. I was really careful with this cut because both sides are going to be used. Normally, if I get a bit off the line, I can back up and shave it off to get back on track, but then the other side of the piece is going to be all messed up, which is normally fine because it's scrap. But like I said, in this case, because both sides of that cut are going to be used and are going to be sort of a finished product, I just took a really lot of care and went slowly to make this a nice cut. Okay, now I just need to finish it off with a jigsaw to clean up the corners that didn't cut all the way through. Okay, I've got it all cut up, and I'm just going to go through and stain all the surfaces that I've exposed, and then I'll assemble it out on the box once that's done. I've got all the pieces I need to finish the door. For the door itself, I just cut some strips of 1/2-inch plywood and screwed through from behind, carefully pre-drilling and checking the length of the screws to make sure they weren't going to poke through the finished front. So that's all good, and that's held nicely as one piece. And then for the perimeter pieces, it's a bit tricky because I have to get under that fascia and then there's no way to lever the bottom piece down. But luckily, because of the way it is, these side pieces I can actually just slide in from the side after the fact. So I got the bottom piece in with the funky notching to go over the tongue down and wedge this up, and then I can just slide these in as needed. And then that allows me to shift it around, test fit the door, which I have, to make sure exactly where I want it to sit. And then same thing with that, because I'm not going to be accessing the tongue here, everything's going to be in place before I start fastening. I'm going to do the same thing by screwing in from behind and just make sure I don't poke through, but that way I can hold everything in place, fasten it down, and then once this is all secure, I can put the hinges and the hardware for the door on and finish it off. Okay, I've carefully placed the hardware and got the door sitting about right, so now I can finish fastening it all down. Just putting on the second bolt thing here, and it's important that I keep the first one engaged while I'm working on this, so that I know that they're both going to line up once I've got everything screwed down all the way. Alright, I got all the hardware on and finished off the door. The bottom bolt is pretty tight, but it actually keeps it held in place so it doesn't rattle around like in the wind or something. And it also keeps it up at the right height to keep all the seams in line. So it's actually pretty good. And then they both will engage properly. And now we can access the entirety of that area for propane tanks and potentially batteries in the future. Basically, it's just a utility box for utility use. Also, we tried to match the hardware, but in the Home Depot that we were in, there just wasn't a good set that was going to work. So we picked that because it matches the door handle, kind of, on the front door. And then the stainless steel, which is kind of just neutral in its look and is weather resistant. So I think it looks all right, though.
If you want to see some of our previous videos, click on the preview tiles. And subscribe if you want to follow our progress.
This is what is behind this shot. It's a horse. Yep.